Government corruption has never been more prevalent or caused more harm. It's why extremism is on the rise. It's why the financial gap between the haves and have-nots has never been wider. And it's why our planet is at risk of an extinction level tragedy. That's why I need your help to keep exposing the truth about the rot on both sides of the aisle. Become a supporter or a friend of the show today by clicking on the coffee link in the description box below. Friends of the show join me on a Zoom hangout once a month, and you guys can ask me any questions you want, and I can get to know you better. But the most important reason to help is to keep the show alive. Together, we can and will save our country and our planet. Thanks in advance and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So if you've been following the events surrounding Donald Trump's big lie, the conspiracy theories about fake votes in Georgia, fraudulent elector scheme, all that stuff, then today's hearing was probably old news for you. But if you haven't been paying attention to any of those details, then it probably was pretty shocking to hear. The committee brought in 4 witnesses and they played videos of others' testimony as they've done in previous days. And the primary theme of today's hearing was who Trump pressured, who and his allies pressured, and how they pressured them to overturn the election. Also in the absence of actual evidence of election fraud. And then the secondary theme was how Trump incited violence against all of these people simply because they refused to break the law for him. And almost all of the people who were pressured and then threatened were Republicans. They were Republicans who, by the way, voted for Trump. There were a couple of bombshells dropped. One was that Republican Senator Ron Johnson apparently attempted to hand deliver the fake elector documents directly to then Vice President Mike Pence on January 6th. And for those who aren't really familiar with this, what it's all about, I'm going to briefly explain. Residents in each state cast their ballots for president, as you guys know. Whichever candidate receives the most votes, that candidate's electors are then sworn in. This takes place usually in the state capitol. And then those electors, meaning men and women from the state who have been certified, who have been chosen and certified to represent that specific candidate, those electors then cast all of their votes for the winner of the popular vote in their state. It's kind of a formality, but whoever wins the popular vote in the state should receive all of that state's elector votes. But attorneys Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, essentially what they tried to do was have an entirely different group of electors, Trump electors, sworn in and then cast their elector votes for Trump. And attorney John Eastman essentially said that if there were 2 sets of elector documents, one set for Biden and one set for Trump, that would cause, quote, uncertainty. And he believed that that would be enough to cast doubt on who really won, whereby giving Vice President Mike Pence the excuse that he needed to delay the certification of the Electoral College votes on January 6th. Another one of the shocking moments today was when the committee shared that the Trump campaign offered to pay the legal fees for any of his fake electors who might get in legal trouble. That's called a clue. And Trump and his allies knew that this scheme was unconstitutional because his own campaign attorneys told him that it was unconstitutional, it was unlawful, it shouldn't be done. But still, they forged ahead with it anyway. And now we know Senator Ron Johnson, a sitting member of the Senate, attempted to take part in this scam by giving these fake documents to the vice president that day on January 6th. And we learned also today that Republican Congressman Andy Biggs reached out to the Republican House Speaker for the state of Arizona, and he asked him to decertify Biden's electors and to instead accept fraudulent Trump electors. Biggs also apparently asked this House Speaker to sign onto a letter. This was on January 6th. He calls him on January 6th and says, hey, will you sign onto a letter stating that there was fraud, or at least stating that you support the decertification of Biden's electors? And the guy was like, no, I'm not doing that. There's no evidence. So more and more, we're realizing why Republicans tried so hard to tank this investigation, why they didn't want this to ever happen. It's because so many of them are accomplices in an attempted coup. And you may have already heard this. It was reported this past week that these fake electors were told to keep all of this secret, meaning what they were doing by casting their votes for Trump. That would be another clue, right? Maybe what you're doing isn't legit if you have to keep it secret. And what we know now is that some of them, in fact, particularly in the state of Michigan, were apparently planning to hide out in the state capitol overnight so that then they could cast their phony elector votes in an official government building without anybody else knowing. So they were literally going to hang out, stay there, hide from the guards, I'm assuming, so that they could hide out overnight. And basically, that blows their whole defense right there. Because I'll be honest with you guys, up until now, I didn't think that this fake elector scheme was really the smoking gun or as big of a deal as everyone on mainstream media was making it out to be. You know, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, well, all they have to do is say, yeah, we cast the votes, but, you know, this was just a formality. This was just a procedural requirement in case Trump won one of his lawsuits and in case he was able to prove election fraud, because there's a cutoff date. You know, according to our Constitution, these electors have to meet and certify their votes by a specific date in December. So I figured they're going to use that as an excuse, and they're going to say, we didn't know we were violating the Constitution. We were violating, you know, any laws, no harm, no foul. You know, we're just doing it to get all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed by the deadline. But the fact that they tried to hide their actions, yeah, that changes the whole ball game. That shows consciousness of guilt. Although I should say some did and some didn't try to hide it, at least as far as we know right now. There's some who definitely did. Clearly, like I said, the Michigan electors, they were trying to do it in the dark of night. So they knew what they were doing was wrong. If you have to hide out in a building overnight, probably a crime. It was also reported that the Georgia fake electors were told to keep this all secret. So I don't know if they all were or if it was just those two, but you guys know, I'll let you know as I find out more.